And we have, again, to welcome, and we welcome with open arms, Steve Bone to the airwaves of Pompey Sound. Steve,
thank you very much.
You're doing well.
Not too bad, yes, you?
Buoyed by, we're talking on the Thursday, buoyed by yesterday's news about
Yes.
Adrian Segecic. Been dying to get your thoughts on this.
A signing at last, yeah. Well, I say at last. I mean, it's not really at last, is it? Because we're still only in mid-June and the window hasn't been open that long, really. Opened and closed, then opened again. But I think you're always pleased to get the first signing through, aren't you? I think people worry if the first one doesn't arrive too soon, and this does look a good one, doesn't it? He looks quite a hot prospect.
He really does.
I've been watching his all 18 goals that he scored last season on a little thread this morning that Pompey News now put out, and they look. There's a nice variety of goals actually. A couple of tap-ins, but a couple from 12-15 yards, a couple from outside the box. Looks like he likes to shoot from wherever he can if he thinks he's got a chance. Very good left foot on him. And we hear that he's quite versatile as well. Can play number 10, can play wide, which is what you need these days. I mean, so many more and more players are that versatile these days, aren't they? And you need that. You need to be able to switch people around and different players to cover different positions. So yeah, quite excited by it. Really, it's a good start to the summer's business.
I must look at that thread. It sounds interesting. I have seen a couple of bits and pieces of him on YouTube, and he looks like a little pocket dynamo, doesn't he? He does,
doesn't he? Yeah.
He's no bigger than Matt Ritchie, and he sort of scurries about in the same purposeful way with an old head on young shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there was. You can't help make the link and think, could he in some ways give us what Alex Robertson gave us in terms of his attacking midfield play? Busy on the ball, constantly wants to get it forward and wants to be the person getting it forward. That might be a comparison that some will make. Well, there you go. I've made it already. But if he turns out to be as good as Robertson for us, we won't be complaining, will we?
Tell you something I uncovered. I don't think it's particularly significant, but I'd love to get your thoughts on it. There's a small football agency in Australia, and this, on top of Coach Segecic, who is no longer ours, he's got 3 of our 4 Australians on his books.
Has he?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's only got about 22 players.
Right.
Including, by the way, Alex Robertson is on his books.
Yeah, well, clearly there's a bit of business being done between him and Pompey then, isn't there? Or there's a contact there.
They trust each other, let's put it like that, yeah?
Exactly, yeah. And if a particular agent has put a player your way and how he has sold him proves to be correct, then you're going to be more likely to go back to that agent again, aren't you? For more players. So maybe Segecic is not our last Aussie of the summer. I wonder if 1 or 2 others might be coming over. We'll have more Australians at Fratton Park than in the Ashes next winter. There we go. But if they do the job, we don't mind where they're from.
No, except there is this one thing. I will get your thoughts on this. We've mooted it on Pompey Sound. I don't think there's a lot in it, but it has to be considered, and that is that when the Socceroos have a fixture and it's down under, then a significant number of our squad will. Obviously, they wouldn't have been playing anyway because it would, international weekends mean that the proper football is still postponed. But it's a lot to ask of them, more than if they're playing for Holland.
And as we saw with Yengi last season, he doesn't know, even if he's not playing much while he's away, he's not always coming back fit. So that is probably a worry with these. You wouldn't want to lose too many to that sort of trip every international break, would you?
No.
That's going to hinder you. That's going to hinder your ability to sort of keep the training momentum going. I guess they are. That must have been a consideration. Must be a consideration signing any foreign player. Is he going to be away much? Where's he going to be? Where's he going to? Are we going to miss him too much? So yes, you wouldn't want a whole team of Australians going to Australia once every couple of months, would you? That's for sure. But
Yeah, I'm glad you put it like that. There's nothing we can do about it. John Messino is all in favour of international football. He would never dream of even saying to a player, you wouldn't like to just say you've got a bit of a hammy, would you?
You can't do
And
that.
I'm sure nobody ever does that. But
No.
one thing I would like to get your thoughts on with going back to Adrian Segecic is this. We've got very little to go on apart from the thread that I'm going to go chasing, having been tipped it by yourself and enjoyed doing that. But one statistic I saw, which is a bit standout, is that he had 13 goals last season and 1 assist. It's a bit one way, isn't it, that?
It is. Essentially, yeah. I suppose if you're scoring that many, you don't need to assist so much, but you maybe would expect a player in his position to have more assists, wouldn't you, than that? If he's an attacking midfielder, you would think he's going to be playing the ball through to Colby or maybe getting wide and getting the odd cross in. I suppose it depends how Sydney used him.
Yeah.
Really, maybe they used him a bit more directly. Maybe he was a bit more of a bishop at times. He was the main man. Don't know without sort of seeing more of his highlights. I wouldn't like to say, but to be honest, if he scores 13 goals for us and gets 1 assist, I don't think we're
perfectly happy. Yes.
Yeah.
With regard to selfishness, and I'm not saying he's in any way selfish. There's that Bill Shankly story about the young striker said to him when they were having a team chat after training, Mr. Shankly, if I've got a chance to shoot, but one of my colleagues is in a better shooting position, should I shoot or should I pass it to him? And Shankly famously replied, just score the effing goal, son. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't matter what you do. Yeah, the end game is to get it in the goal.
Yes,
do
of course
what's
it is.
necessary to do that.
Of course it is. And even if it risks your fellow striker throwing their hands up because they really did fancy their chances of scoring from it, even if you risk that, if you've got a shot on goal,
you go for it, don't you?
I think you do.
All of the top scorers through history have had a bit of a selfish streak about them, probably, haven't they? Or else they wouldn't be top scorers. There's been a lot of players from down the decades who have scored well, but probably should have created a few more chances for their teammates, but didn't, because they wanted to have a go themselves, and it didn't always come off. Part of the game.
Moving on, Christian Saydee has signed for Wigan, undisclosed fee. Yeah. Everybody is saying how popular he was and how much we're going to miss him, and so on and so forth. And John Messino this morning is giving the reasons why it was right for Christian and for Pompey for him to move on. He was signed as a number 9, and I don't think we ever saw him in a number 9 shirt. So John Messino deserves some credit for turning him into a number 10. How do you think Wigan will play him? Up front or as a number 10?
I've seen something from Wigan saying, welcome to our new number 9. So I think they are thinking of him as an out-and-out striker, which is a bit of a surprise, given that he's not really played that role for us. I think he did a couple of games quite early on in his first season with us.
Maybe.
I seem to remember a cup game when maybe Bishop wasn't playing and he was, and he scored, and it was against Peterborough, I think, from memory. Scored at the Fratton end, probably his first Pompey goal. But he's not been an out-and-out striker for us, has he? He's been behind the striker, or he's been... there have been occasions where there have been 2 up, and he's been one of them. Wigan must have had a look at what he can do and what he's done for us, and think there's a player there that is going to score some goals for them, apart from other qualities that he'll bring. I mean, we know what his qualities are, don't we? He's so tough to get off the ball. He's so good at holding the ball up. He's got some good footwork, actually. For a big lad, we've seen some fancy trickery and turns that have got him away. That have, with the ball at his feet, got him away from his man and set up somebody else for mid forward. But no, he's certainly not been a prolific scorer for us, has he? And I don't know if he will be for Wigan.
We all like our beefy centre forwards, though, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. I think he'll do well at Wigan. You would, without wishing to sound patronising at all, you would say probably League One is his level more than the Championship. I think he's going to get more games at that level. I think the fans up there will love him. I hope he does well. Yeah, I think if ever he comes back here with Wigan or whoever else, I think he'll get a very good welcome back.
Is that in the feet or is that in the head? Because even Conor Ogilvie wasn't sure that he'd be able to hack it in the Championship, and he proved everybody, including himself, wrong.
Yeah.
And did confidence have a part in that for him?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think sometimes you need to, even if at the outset of maybe a Championship season you don't think you're good enough, you need a run of games just to test yourself. That's what Ogilvie had, and eventually he came up to the level. Maybe Saydee could have done as well if he'd had a run of games. He never got that chance because we had other players that were preferred in his positions. But certainly confidence is a big thing, and it can carry you a long way, can't it? As I think Ogilvie proved last season. But yeah, good. Best of luck to Saydee. He's got some good moments.
Absolutely.
And I think everybody, without any exceptions, I think all Pompey fans will wish him well up there.
As long as he doesn't come back one day and score against us, that's.
Oh yeah, we don't want that. I wouldn't go that far.
Now, until Segecic emerged as a nailed-on signing, the only action we've seen is keeping Ben Killip. And re-signing somebody who we've already seen and we know him well. We know he's okay, but we also suspect he's third choice goalkeeper. Yeah. It's not terribly exciting, but it's worth getting your thoughts on that. Ben Killip, our number 3. Yeah,
a little bit of a surprise, wasn't it, that he was kept? But I think the manager must have seen enough of him in training and put him in for the last 2 games of the season, didn't he? And I think he must have seen enough there to think, this is a player that we'd want to keep. This is a player that we can improve, and this is a player we want in the group. If he remains third choice, he's not going to get many games next season. Let's be honest. He could possibly go out on loan somewhere. He might be on the bench for a spell, but he's not our number 2 keeper, unless we've got any other plans for Archer that we don't know about. But yeah, you can't argue with the manager's decision on that. He would have seen him day in, day out on the training ground, and he's obviously seen enough of him in those 2 games at the end of the season to think, there's something to work with there.
Do you think it calls for a particular type of man management, looking after your 3 goalkeepers? Because the third one probably won't be turning up very often in match day with some kit to change into.
No,
he'll be sitting in the stands.
It wasn't so long ago that clubs had 1 goalkeeper.
Correct.
And then when number of subs that you were allowed on a match day grew, then it was you needed a good second keeper, and now a lot of them have 3. Certainly Premier League and Championship, you'll find most of them have 3. But it's a hard life, isn't it? Because you're waiting. If you are that third choice, you're just waiting for a chance, and you don't know if that chance is going to come, or if you're going to have to go elsewhere, or you're going to go on loan. And also, if your chance is going to come, it could come very quickly, couldn't it? Because if one of those 2 ahead of you gets injured during the game,
exactly,
and suddenly you're one up the pecking order and you're in the limelight. So you've got to be ready. So it's a difficult. I think generally the life of a goalkeeper is a difficult existence, isn't it? And certainly if you're third choice anywhere, it must be harder. But it's a case of managing those players and managing their expectations, isn't it? And I would imagine that Mousinho is very good at that.
Yes. When you sign I'm not going to call Segecic a headline signing, but it will have been noticed by other people who are maybe talking to Pompey, or talking, and maybe agents who are talking to one or more of their clients about Pompey to say, well, look, they've just signed Segecic, and we know that he's a hot prospect. So the reason I'm asking this, couching this question in this way, is because I don't know if you caught it. There was a little flicker of a reportage about a guy called Patrick Nuama. Oh, you've cottoned it.
I have seen it.
Do you think it will come into the conversation with his people that Pompey are kind of a place to go if you're a 19-year-old.
Yeah,
He's 19.
Yeah, he made his debut over there when he was 16, I think, didn't he?
Youngest player ever to play in Serie B.
Yeah, winger, I think, isn't he, first and foremost? I suppose once you've signed, if you've signed a good young prospect from Australia, then that says you are a club that is looking around wherever it's possible and necessary to look. You're looking far and wide at good young players, and you want to bring them in, and you want to. You're giving yourself a chance to develop them. So I do think there's an element of one signing can sort of help along another one, and another one after that, and another one after that. So I think that's quite possible. I suspect we'll probably get a few names, like the Italian lad. Coming out over the next few weeks, because clearly Pompey have said, we're looking in Europe, we're looking in Australia. There's probably nowhere they're not looking. They're maybe looking in America, for all we know. There was an American defender, wasn't there, mentioned a week or two ago?
Norwich lad.
That's right, yeah. So, word gets around, doesn't it? But I think once you have made the statement of signing someone from that sort of stable, then yes, I think it could easily
snowball.
Be a snowball effect, which is quite exciting, really. I mean, you're not going to take everybody that comes to your attention, are you? You can't. You don't want to. You can't afford to have a scattergun approach and sign 6 or 7 young prospects from abroad in the hope that they all do well, because they're not all going to do well, and you're not going to have room for them. But Pompey have got a good scouting network there, clearly. They'll be doing their homework and all the names that come their way. It wouldn't surprise me if we see 1 or 2 more from that, the sort of late teens, the early 20s, players that we've not necessarily heard of before now, coming over and being part of the squad.
Just broadening the conversation with you, Steve, to sort of Fratton Park in general, if you like. We don't talk about the women perhaps as often as we should. I've heard a rumour that they're going to be playing more games at Fratton Park next season. We haven't got a fixture list published yet. Their season tickets are available for the women, but it doesn't designate which stadium they're going to be playing at. But I noticed that the old and wonderful Goodison Park of Everton is going to be the sole venue of Everton women.
Yeah, which is great. I think it's wonderful that Goodison Park has been saved from being bulldozed and turned into Everton Mews, or whatever they would have called it. I think it's women's football has grown so much so quickly, hasn't it? In some at some levels it's probably grown too quickly, because we have seen a few women's teams and women's clubs get into some financial difficulty. And I think some have maybe spent a little bit more too quickly than they should have done. But Pompey women must benefit from playing more games at Fratton Park, mustn't they? They tend to play. They played in the last couple of years, sort of 3 or 4 a year at Fratton, and I think they get pretty good crowds there. They certainly get bigger crowds there than they do at Wesley Park or wherever else they're playing. That tends to be where they play the home games, I think, isn't it? And if they can up that a little bit, then people that go and watch them only when they play at Fratton will be watching them more regularly. They might take a friend along, they might take the whole family along. It's very much more of a sort of family pursuit, isn't it? I think watching women's football compared to watching the men's game. So it's good for them. Our owners seem to like and want to protect and improve our women's team, which I think in this day and age is essential, really. And for the team themselves, must be great to play at Fratton Park, mustn't it? A lot of them will have grown up watching the men's team play there, and got that. That's how they would have got the football bug. And now they're able, and 10 or 20 years ago, you'd never have thought a women's team would be playing.
Word spreads around. No, I've got a cousin and she's playing at Fratton Park on Sunday. It's eye-catching.
It is, yeah.
And it increases the status of the thing, and knowing that the owner will turn up and be driven with his wife to Milton Keynes to watch them play, I think it was.
Yeah.
the club seem to be building towards putting the women's game at Pompey on some kind of level footing with the men, and that will take time, but it could be what's the coming thing.
Takes a lot of time, doesn't it? You can't rush it. You can't expect too much too soon. But they did well last year. They were promoted to the Women's Championship last season, had a bad start and looked as though they were going to go straight back down again, but actually just ground out the results. And I think Jay Sadler ended up being Women's Championship Manager of the season, wasn't he, at the LMA Awards, which was great. So yes, it's a good setup there, a lot of potential there, and I think they'll only do well if they are able to play more games at Fratton.
Now, also, just looking at Fratton Park in general as an organisation, I'm not going to call it a business because that puts some people's backs up. It's our football club, it's not a business. Well, it's an organisation anyway. Let's agree on that.
Yes.
When I was looking at pictures of Segecic in a Pompey shirt, which they unveiled last night and this morning, I was looking for clues as to whether he has arrived yet, or whether he is still just attending to affairs in Australia.
Oh, okay, right.
And I noticed that the seat he was sitting in was Pompey blue, but it wasn't the usual picture of a new arrival in a Pompey shirt on the touchline.
Right.
And I don't think that was because the weather was too poor for him, although Australians are used to it being even hotter than it is here at the moment.
Yeah.
But he was wearing a Pompey shirt I've never seen before. Maybe I've just not noticed it. It was a polo shirt with the Pompey crest on the left and a Nike swoosh on the right.
I'm going to look it up while we're talking. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to get your overview on merchandise. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Are we getting it right? Some clubs are accused of milking supporters with their shirts, changing 3 shirts every season, just so they get the revenue from it. What's Steve Bone's take?
I think there's a balance to be had in that. I think it is a big part of football today. It's a big part of your income. People do want merchandise. They want to buy shirts. They want to buy other things that are available. So it's got to be good. It's got to be good quality. Sometimes it's got to be a bit different. I do think clubs generally, and I'm not saying this about Pompey, it's a general point. I think generally speaking, the fact that clubs change their shirts every year and have 2 or 3 variations of the shirt every year is asking a lot of fans. It's a lot of money to be. No new shirt is cheap these days. It go enormous costs just to buy one new shirt, even a kid's one. It doesn't come cheap, does it? And I do think there's a pressure on fans, especially those with kids and young people that want the new shirt all the time, want to be out and about in Portsmouth and seen in the new shirt and fussed to have it and so on. I do think it's a lot to ask of people, but at the same time, the clubs are doing it because other clubs are doing it. It's kind of market forces in a way, isn't it? I suppose the clubs wouldn't do it if loads of people didn't buy them. I do think it's a shame they can't generally across the board be a bit cheaper. The retro shirts are very popular these days, aren't they?
Why is that? You're absolutely right, but why is that?
I think it's for the same reason that anything retro has got a certain audience. People like to see highlights of a Pompey game from 20 or 30 years ago, or from the Premier League era, or from the FA Cup run in the 90s. And in the same way, they like to see they associate good old days of when they were young and watching Pompey in their prime or whatever. They remember what the shirt was like then, and if the shirt comes back and is suddenly seen all around the streets and around the stadium and ground, people like that and people want one themselves, and that's why it's worked. They did come out with last week, didn't they, with a mashup shirt? Did you see that?
Yep. I thought it was pretty garish.
I think deliberately garish. I think it's one of those that's almost so bad it's good, so bad that it will have a certain appeal. And I think probably it's probably done okay in terms of sales so far. As long as the first team don't run out wearing it in the first game next season, that would be a problem. But no, I think Pompey have been criticised in the past for being slow with new kits and for choosing the wrong suppliers and suppliers without much imagination. But I think the last couple of years they seem to have got it right. I'm not a replica shirt person myself. I haven't had ones for 30 years or more.
But you could still wear it now if you still got it, or is it a duster?
It is somewhere. It does exist somewhere in the depths of the wardrobe. Actually, I think it might have gone away with my son. I think he might have it. It's one of the black and red quartered ones from 92, 93. Good, with Goodman's on the front.
Be worth something, on eBay.
Oh yeah. There's definitely a market for these things. But no, I think I'd love to know how much money clubs make from this sort of stuff these days. It's not just shirts, is it? It's all the associated stuff as well.
Yes, you're right.
The hats and the shorts and the leisure wear and the coats and the hoodies and everything else.
Quick stroll down memory lane with you, Steve. Do you remember when men were boys, when you were a lad? Didn't you enjoy just browsing around the shop to see if you could afford anything before a game?
Oh yeah, definitely. We used to go in the shop every game. It was part of the sort of routine before a game.
It was.
Even though you were going in there once a fortnight. If you were going in there for every home game, and there wasn't a lot of difference between what was in there one home game compared to the last, but you still went in just to have a look and just to see if there was something on offer, or see if there was something new in there. And of course, when you have kids, when I started taking Adam to Fratton Park, that sort of need to go in there and have a look increased with him. He always wanted to go in there and wanted to pick something up. I can remember when the Pompey shop was a little thing that you couldn't get more than 10 people in at once.
It was tiny, wasn't it?
Grown, and the Premier League clubs now have mega stores and all sorts, don't they?
And the ironing board that they used to use to iron on the numbers or name that you wanted on the back of your shirt, that took up 3/4 of the shop, didn't it? If you remember, it used to be ironed on before your very eyes.
Yeah, now have a whole department of people doing that, I think, don't they? But it's part of football, isn't it? And an important part of how football clubs need to make money. And if we're talking about all these signings that we want, then clubs have to make the revenue.
It plays its part.
It does. It can't be overlooked.
Okay. Now, this is not going to become a routine thing, because that could quite easily dog you, but the last couple of Steve Bone Speaks, you've entertained us enormously with some idiosyncratic stat or incident, and I gather you've got another one up your sleeve today.
Yeah, this following on from last week's chat when we talked about the game that finished 149-0 in Madagascar, because one team just set out to keep scoring as many own goals as they could, and they managed 149 in one game. I remarked that there was an occasion when Pompey managed to concede 2 goals in a couple of minutes without the opposition touching the ball between the 2 goals. And a lot of listeners will, if you're of a certain age, you'll know this story and you'll remember it, and you might have been there as I was. 1984-85 season. We'd had a really good start to the season. We were top of the table after 10 games, and we went up to Plough Lane, the old Plough Lane, away to Wimbledon. In the days when they had Alan Cork playing up front, Dave Besant I think was in goal. I should imagine Dennis Wise might have been in the team. Don't know, can't quite remember. But anyway, 0-0, late first half. Wimbledon score a bit of an ugly goal. There was a bit of a scramble in the box. Wimbledon knock it in, and in the process of knocking it in, Alan Knight, who's in goal for Pompey, injures his knee. Wimbledon 1-0 up, minute or so to go to half time. Pompey kick off, play the ball back through the midfield, back to Noel Blake, centre half. He plays it back to Alan Knight, because in those days teams often played it back from the kick-off so that the keeper could boot it upfield to the big man up top. But Alan Knight was still attending to his injured knee and did not see that Noel Blake had passed it back to him, and the ball rolled straight past him, and with about 5,000 Pompey fans behind the goal screaming for something about it, in it rolled. 2-0 down all of a sudden. So going 1-0 down just before half time was bad enough, and we just managed to concede a goal without any Wimbledon player touching the ball between the 2 goals.
Only at Pompey.
We did come back a little bit in the second half, got it back to 2-1, but it ended up losing 3-2. and at the end of the season missed out on promotion by a point on goal difference.
Good
so people
grief.
will look back at that game and think, oh, if only we hadn't done that.
What a story.
And Alan Knight still gets reminded of it to this day. Noel Blake less so, because people are still scared of Noel Blake and they don't want to remind him of it.
Quite right too.
But poor old Alan, he for every goal like that he let in, he made 10 great saves, but people don't remind him of that. They remind him of the own goal at Wimbledon, October 1984. So what was that, 41 years ago? I think somewhere, at some stage, it did show up on... There was a grainy bit of footage of it on YouTube somewhere. So if people want to go and have a look for Wimbledon v Pompey 1984 own goal,
I will.
They may still be able to find it.
Was he sitting on the deck then, Alan Knight, or having to limp around?
He was standing, but he was very much focused on his knee because it had taken quite a whack, and it was quite sore, I think. In today's game, he'd gone down and the physio had been on, and
of course,
it all had been tended to. Keepers go down for that sort of thing now, don't they? But in those days,
much less they go down for.
Yeah, that's right. It was play on unless you're shot or something. He just wasn't looking until it was too late, and Noel Blake wasn't looking at the fact that he was tending to his knee. So, comedy of errors. We've never forgotten it. But thankfully we haven't conceded another one like it since. Well,
it's ingrained on defenders now that if you are passing the ball to the keeper, don't pass it wide of the goal.
Yes, they do that now, don't they?
Yeah.
It's very sensible, actually. Yeah. Wish we'd thought of that to tell Noel back in the day. But
well, the other thing is, Alan Knight was very rarely injured, as is evinced by the fact that he managed 600 and something appearances.
Yeah.
You can't, if you're injury prone, you're not going to do that.
No. The worst injury I can remember him getting, ironically, was at Plough Lane a few years later when he had an elbow that broke his cheekbone. In the days when Wimbledon were known for their questionable tactics, we had a few injuries at their hands, and it was towards the end of our one season in the First Division, late 80s, evening game up there, which finished 2-2, I think. And I think Alan had been pretty much ever present throughout that season, and he ended the night in hospital nursing a very ugly looking broken cheekbone and missed the rest of the season and missed out relegation. So,
that must have been quite an injury then, because we can't talk about Alan Knight without wishing him well, of course.
Yes, that's right.
And I know yourself and everybody listening is wishing him well at this very moment.
And I believe he's doing well. I believe he's fighting a good fight.
There was a quote by him some time ago after his illness was confirmed and the treatment that he was going to be undergoing was designated to him. And he said this, and thinking back to the way he played the game with such warrior-like, he always reminded me as one of those Spartans guarding that hole in the wall against the Persians in that film. You'd have had Alan Knight on your side there. He was so heroic. He said, I quote, "Thing is," he said, "for some reason I thought I was immortal."
Yeah.
And that's how he played the game.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
diving at your feet. What's the problem there?
Yeah, he thought nothing of any sort of battle or confrontation or one-on-one thing he was going into. Yeah, fearless, really, isn't it? Yeah.
And then get changed upstairs and several pints, and as I remember, a couple of packets of some sort of cigarette, which you don't even mention nowadays on radio, quite rightly. Well, thank you for that, Steve. We've had a good roundup there of everything. You, good listener, you are either listening to this on Pompey Sound, because Steve's words go out regularly through the week, but you may be listening on podcast as well, because his podcasts are understandably one of our most popular on Pompey Sound. We're going to be giving you details of ways in which you can, if you want to, contact Steve via us, and we'll pass on your question, query or observation. So that's a little add-on there. And Steve, enjoy the lovely weather. I gather you've got a week off.
Yeah, bit of time off to come. Yeah.
Pompey Sound is having
Sorry, go on.
I was going to say Pompey Sound is having a week off next week, same week as you, I guess.
Right.
So we won't be able to talk to you on our usual Thursday, but we'll make a date to get your thoughts as soon after as possible when the studios are open again.
we will have some new fixtures to talk about by then, won't we?
We will.
Some Championship fixtures which are out next week.
We will.
So,
Okay.
lots to look forward to.
Take care. Enjoy the sun.
Thank you very much. You too.